just kind of talked about how crazy it is. People live their life, and you look around and you don't like what you're getting.
Yeah.
And it's like I likened it to, it's like a farmer who is, he's planting. He wants a corn harvest at the end of the harvest, but he plants wheat all year long, but he prays for corn. He expects corn. He hopes for corn. He does everything. Gets his prayer group together at church. They pray for corn, and he gets wheat. And he, at the end of the harvest, is like frustrated. Like, why didn't I get corn? And I just used the illustration that what are we planting? What are you planting daily into the lives of the people around you? So that you can look around and say, I either like my life or I don't like my life. And the reason, and if you look around at your life right now and you see something that you don't like, more than likely it's because you've been planting that for the last 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you've got something that you don't like, and you want to look around and blame everybody else for it. But your bag of seed that you have right here in your hip that you're dropping on the ground everywhere, every day that you live your life is exactly what you're getting. What you're putting out there is exactly what you're getting back. So it was just along those lines. It was a lot more.
I love that. And let's just call that the start of this, and we can maybe intro that, So, another, like, do a separate intro and drop it in so we can set it up, since this just kind of happened. But I mean, I'd like to just kind of dive into some of my thoughts about values, because I think it really fits in with that. Because then I think what I was thinking is how then that translates to the lives of others around you.
Yeah.
Because then you've raised a family you've raised children who have grown up believing in a corn harvest,
Right.
And believing that is what they should be working toward, and never seeing the product of what that should look like. And, talking with a friend at work, or it's a professional friend, but she was talking about
your friend.
Right. Good. I like it. A professional associate who I have worked with. Yes. Now the relationship is purely pay for friendship. Professional friend, a friend that is a professional. So, talk about over explaining, right? I think we've already covered that, but talking about, all that, she's living a life, and the details aren't important, but living a lifestyle that is different than she was raised, in terms of the way that her parents raised her to kind of live, right? Like, and it just, she's now living kind of like a life that she wants to live. And she was having a conversation with her mother, and she said, man, I always wish I could live this life, right? A life that is, in Manhattan, that is, exciting, that is fun. And I just never really, I thought life had to be this way.
Yeah.
And I just, it was just that juxtaposition of going, wow, she was raised by somebody who wanted to live a life one way, but who was raised to believe life should look a different way.
Yeah.
So she has been brought up with the guilt associated with living differently than what she was always raised and told was the right way to live, but which actually fit in and squared better with the life that her mom wanted to live. And I just think it's the exact parallel of what you're saying, except it's kind of the outcrop of that.
Yeah.
That when, that when you see somebody living that life, you're raised to believe this is the right way to live. And, you just, you're taking your cues and your example from people who aren't living courageously, who aren't looking inwardly, who aren't asking, making decisions for what's best for them, but they're making decisions based on what may have been best for those that taught them how they should live. And I just think it really connected well with all the things we've been talking about, that inward journey, and really like getting to a place where you go, man, I've lived my life based on a value set that was given to me by somebody who didn't even believe in or love or value that value set themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
So how is that value system created inside someone if they're not taught it? Right? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, I think I'm talking about no. I mean that's how you're taught. But well, I think the value system that you're taught is like how to live your life, not how to figure out how to live your life. I think that's the difference. There is, instead of teaching our kids the way to live your life is to grow up, get married, have kids, and go to church every Sunday. Instead, it's like, how should I be figuring out how to live my life?
Yeah.
Is how I should be raising my kids.
Yeah.
I should be teaching them how to look inward, how to figure out what it is that that they want out of life, which may be totally different than what I want out of life.
Right.
But not to assume that planting corn is the right way to live your life, because at your farmer's core, what they want is a harvest of wheat.
Yeah.
And that may be what I want too, but I always thought the right way to live was, praying for corn.
Yeah, he thought doing these certain activities is going to naturally create this, instead of actually creating inside yourself what we think those activities are responsible for.
Exactly.
It's like we think going to church makes us good people. It inherently has a quality to it that makes people want to do good and be good. But I know some of the best people I've ever met have never darkened the door of church.
Yeah.
It's like they're just, and that's kind of the thought that I've had when I've thought more about, when someone will ask me, well, what they'll find out that I used to be a minister, and they'll say, well, where are you going to church now? And it's like the same conversation all the time. Where are you going to church now? Well, I don't go to church anymore. Oh, but you're still a believer, right? And it's like, okay, do I want to just say yes and end this conversation, or do I want to be honest?
The person that asks you that question is the person you say yes to.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm still a believer.
Yeah.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Go Jack Nicholson on him.
Exactly. And so I many times will just say yes, but it makes me, just brings me back to those thoughts of, what is, so it makes me really have that conversation with myself after I have that conversation with a person. Okay, now what do I believe? Well, I believe that, I honestly believe that if I would have never gone to church, had I never opened a Bible, had I never heard about Jesus or God or any of that, I would still know right from wrong. I would still know. It's like it's like it innate in all of us. We know that generosity is better than greed. I don't need to have read that to believe it. I believed that before I read it. I know that giving is better than receiving. I know that it's not good to be angry at someone for my entire life. I know that forgiveness is the best route to go because I've experienced it, and those are the tenets that I believe. That's what I believe, it's like, what do you believe? Well, I believe that life is better lived by following these obvious principles, these obvious tenets, that aren't faith tenets. They're there before the Bible's ever written. Somebody forgave somebody, before any of that was written down and made a mandate, people already knew those things to be true.
Right.
And that's, I think, it's like, how do you build that? How do you reinforce that? especially when you start thinking about the next generation, thinking about your kids. I'm sure as parents it's tempting to decide to go to church because it's like my kids are going to be taught, and if you
But I
don't,
think that's it, is instead of teaching, it's questioning. I mean, I know that's a simple thing, but maybe that's one of the takeaways. And for me, it's in that church context, and I think we're getting into church not intending to. It's a good example, or a good a relatable way of thinking about how these conversations take place. But in church, it's like, what should I do, left or right? Well, what does the Bible say? There's truth out there, and it's like when you start from a place of search for the answer, then I think you've already gone wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because what do you think? What do you want? What do you know? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we put people when in situations where they're questioning things down a road of trying to find the answer, instead of trying to find the question.